Hello, everyone. Just to let you know, we'll start recording so that people can later watch this webinar. It will be hosted by Irene, and we'll have two great speakers.
Thank you, Kate. The recorded webinar will be uploaded on our Sustain YouTube channel, as you know, and it will be available to anyone. We will start in 2 minutes from now. Okay. More people are coming, but I think we are ready to start now. So I would like to welcome you on our fifth Sustain webinar. This webinar is about salinity challenges and sustainable responses in agricultural systems. And our first distinguished speaker is Elson Galang from Dalhousie University of Canada. And his title is When Salinization and Social Conflicts Collide, the Case of Agricultural Dikelands in the Bay of Fundy, Nova Scotia. Dear Elson, I will stop sharing and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Irene. Let me just set up my screen so that it actually works. So give me a minute.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay.
Put it in full mode,
Yeah,
please.
I will. Okay. Does it work now? Is it on full screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Is it good? Like it doesn't show the presenter view? It's full screen?
it is full screen. I think it's everything
Amazing.
perfect. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Irene. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are joining. As Irene kindly mentioned, I'm currently based in Canada, so it's 8 a.m. on my time right now. So really just excited to be here with you. And as Irene also kindly mentioned, I'll be talking about social conflicts and salinization, but I also added the climate change part because I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle of what I'm trying to share here today. And as Irene also mentioned, I'm part of Dalhousie University right now, where I am a fellow, but I'm also part of other centers such as the Transcoastal Adaptation Center, which is part of another university here in Canada. And I also just took over a vice lead position in working group 3 with Nurai, the other speaker for today, working with the wonderful lead Zinepi. So really just excited to almost like introduce myself a little bit more of like who the hell is this person coming into the picture? So yeah, a little bit more about me. Maybe I'll just start with this a little bit more introduction so that you don't be surprised of what exactly I'm doing. So I'm an environmental social scientist. I work a lot on the social dimensions, so of social ecological systems, basically human nature relationships, for example. I also work a lot on ecosystem services, particularly on the social science side of ecosystem services. That's how I got to work with Zinepi and Nurai and Working Group 3 who are working on the values of these salt-affected lands. And I also work a lot on collaborative environmental governance and transdisciplinary methods, doing my training all over the world, from the Philippines to Tokyo in Japan to McGill University in Canada. So I've been everywhere except for Europe. So I would be so excited to be there at some point. So yeah, just a little bit of a context of why these kinds of things that I do. And in particular, the presentation today is a synthesis almost, or a teaser or a taster of this big project that we've been doing for the past 7 years. So it just wrapped up a few weeks ago. So this is a project that has been a project. It's not ongoing anymore. It's called NCIRC-RexNet. So I've been part of this project for the past 5 years, that it's a national project to explore how to better manage, model, and monitor ecosystem services in social ecological landscapes and seascapes in Canada. So we've done this project from the West Coast, from the British Columbia side, where we explored, for example, kelp sea otter systems, to the northwest side of Canada on the peatlands and boreal forest. And what I'm going to be presenting to you today is on the Bay of Fundy's dikelands, which is quite the more interesting, I would say, for this group. So this project in the Bay of Fundy dikelands has been supported by several organizations, universities, NGOs, and governments across the eastern side of Canada. So for the next 15 minutes, hopefully, or 18 minutes, so that we have time for questions and clarificatory period, I'm going to present to you a case study in part of that project on the agricultural dikelands on the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the Canadian geography, but we are like one of the biggest countries in terms of spatial size, but also very interestingly, one of the fewer people out there per square meters. But the case study I'm going to be presenting to you today is actually on the easternmost side. So I think more people are familiar with the bigger cities like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary. So this one is more niche on the easternmost side. And fun fact, it's actually closer to fly from this area to Europe than to fly from this area to the other end of Canada. So that's how to give you an idea of how big Canada is. And this is just a small part, but a very, very interesting part of Canadian social ecological systems. So this is how an agricultural dikeland looked like in that part of Canada. So I want you to remember this picture, because this is a very important picture of the dikelands, where you got three very distinct parts. I would say four, where you got the ocean. So you're facing the Atlantic Ocean, which is part of the Bay of Fundy, basically. And you got the tidal wetlands. And then you got the dikes. And then you got the agricultural dikelands. And behind the agricultural dikelands are actually communities. So these are people, houses, residential, businesses, etc. So remember this picture, or you could just remember the schematic diagram, where you got a tidal wetlands facing the ocean, you got the dikes, and then you got the agricultural dikelands, and then you got the communities, and you got the settlement basically behind the agricultural dikelands. So where can you find these agricultural dikelands? So basically, if you look at this map, the one with red highlights are the areas right now where these agricultural dikelands are being practiced or pretty much ongoing. But I think so that we could really appreciate and recognize the values and the ecosystem services being provided by these dikelands, we have to go back a little bit to its history. So pre-colonial period, so before 1400s, this area was just all tidal wetlands. So you got ocean, and then you got tidal wetlands, and then you got indigenous First Nations, Native people settlement. So this has been pretty much known as Mi'kmaq, or by the Mi'kmaqi, by the Mi'kmaq people. See, these are the indigenous peoples who have been living there before colonization happened. So those tidal wetlands that you saw there have very important cultural species, such as cattails, salmon, and sweetgrasses. So the tidal wetlands provide these diverse cultural ecosystem services for those indigenous communities that have been living in these areas before colonization happened. And then, of course, colonization happened, as in the rest of the world. But what's so interesting, I don't know how many people are familiar with the history of Canada, but Canadian history is quite unique in a sense that we got two colonizers. We've got the British in most of Canada, but then we also got the French. So we got French colonizers in Quebec, for example, but also you got people from the western region of France called the Acadians who were dispossessed of their lands in France. So they moved and they found this area in the Bay of Fundy, which they call La Baie Françoise, literally the French Bay. So these French Acadians arrived. But what is so interesting and why this is so important is because in the rest of Canada, colonization happened very, very badly. So there was a brutality of conquest where colonizers were killing Indigenous and First Nations people in the rest of Canada, except for this one. In these areas, actually, the Acadians became friends with Indigenous peoples, the Mi'kmaq, in this area. And what was so interesting is that in the rest of Canada, when colonizers arrived, they clear-cut old-growth forest. So, for example, when the British arrived, they cut all the trees and they started farming. But for this part here in Canada, the French Acadians were known as clearers of water. So they practiced farming along the tidal wetlands. So they saw that when they arrived, oh, there's a ton of tidal wetlands in this area. So what they did was that they applied the same technique they had in France here in the Bay of Fundy. So what they did was that they practiced this engineering method called dikes and sluice system. So what they did was that they put dikes across the tidal wetlands, then they drained the water out of those wetlands, and then they started farming. So during this period, many of the tidal wetlands were converted eventually into arable agricultural dikelands with their dikes. And throughout time, throughout the hundreds of years, this was continued even after like the more modern history where we got more modern approaches to diking and agricultural dikelands. People in Netherlands would be familiar with this, with the polders and across their system because it's quite a similar technology. So that's just to lay down this idea that this landscape has been such a crucial landscape for the collective identities of the communities in that area. So for 400 plus years, this is the kind of landscape they knew. That they have the agricultural dikelands, they got the tidal wetlands, and they got the dikes. So that's just to put that in context, that now we got climate change issues. So this particular region in Canada is projected to have the highest level of sea level rise and has the highest levels of extreme weather events, likelihoods of extreme weather events. And that has been already happening. So these are actual pictures in that region. In fact, several of these dikes have already been breached or flooded during extreme weather events. So as you see here in the picture, so that's an actual dike land. Those are dikes that have been breached because of strong weather events, comprised with flooding and things like that. So this is the issue being faced by that particular landscape. You got this interacting effects of sea level rise, and then you got major weather events that are expected to exacerbate or worsen in the next few years. That this oceanic water, the sea water overtops the dike. Basically, the sea water goes through the dikes, and in some cases, it even breaches the dike. So you got saltwater intrusion coming into these dikelands, and then it salinizes not just the actual farming area, but also like the groundwater recharge, for example, in the communities behind the dikelands. So this is almost like the mechanism of how the salinization is happening behind the dike area. So what do we do? There is a problem. There are problems of climate change. that in turn causes all these issues of saltwater intrusion and eventual salinization that is in fact already happening in some of these areas here. What to do is just so frustrating. It's just so polarizing. There's a lot of social divisions that are happening right now in these landscapes on like trying what to do in face of this issue. So this is where a lot of the social conflict is actually very prominent right now in this region. I'll give you an example of this ongoing option that they're trying to do there. It's called managed dike realignment. I think in Netherlands, they call it depoldering or something like that. But here in Canada, we call it dike realignment. Basically, the idea is that you move old dikes much further inward to create new dikes. So for example, in this case, you move, you get all the soil and then pull it back all the way to closer landward. In a sense, this is really the idea that you're trying to restore as many natural ecosystems within that area, or you're trying to restore as much tidal wetlands as much as possible. So again, going back to this schematic diagram, this is the status quo right now. And what you're trying to do with that dike realignment is that you want to expand the tidal wetlands. You put stronger dikes all the way back landwards so that you could protect the agricultural dike lands away from overtopping of seawater. And with expanded tidal wetlands, you actually have expanded natural sea buffer as well, where you're trying to protect and provide ecosystem services, natural ecosystem services provided by the tidal wetlands. However, this thing has been very, very controversial and very, very polarizing, as you see here in the different news clippings. The reason why that option is very, very controversial is because of the trade-offs that are being embedded if you do that kind of option. So this is one of the conceptual maps that we've produced through this project, where we've mapped out the different ecosystem services that the dike lands provide. We map out the ecosystem services that the wetlands provide. And these are some of those ecosystem services that are either exclusive or shared by the two landscapes. So what happens here is that if you move the dike realignment, some of the trade-offs that are happening there is that you're going to have trade-offs on the heritage values. And as you saw in the historical context of these landscapes, the heritage of these landscapes are so strong that they are pretty much very much embedded in the social license of preserving the status quo of these landscapes. And then you got a ton of social cultural values. These farmers are like, these have been lands that have been passed on to me by my great-great-great-grandfather. Why would I give parts of it to you? And in some of these areas, it's not just 10% or 20% that you need to realign. In some of these areas, up to half of those lands have to be sacrificed. And also like a lot of trade-offs in the sense of place. Imagine people have been living in this area for 400 years, knowing and understanding that that is the kind of landscape they have. And then you ask them to give up some of that land. So the other thing that people, I wouldn't say people, but the other thing that seems to be happening right now in this landscape is that they'd rather just increase the height and expand the dike lines. So that's like, why do we need to move the dike when we could just increase the height and the width of the dike lines? But as we know, with sea level rise and extreme major events, the ocean is going to swell. This is what we call the phenomenon coastal squeeze, when you got the salt marsh and the physical infrastructure being in the middle, squeezing the tidal wetlands. So what we are losing are actually ecosystem services such as biodiversity values, carbon values, erosion control values that are provided by these tidal wetlands. Now, so that is basically how contested the space is. So what we have been trying to do in this project was really trying to understand the social ecological nuances within that particular landscape. So I encourage everyone to check our website to see the kinds of papers that came out and then that I were able to synthesize for this presentation. So I'll just wrap up in the next 4 minutes or so to say that what exactly did I do in this project? So I'm the transdisciplinary researcher of this project. And now we've understood, based on those empirical data, based on those interviews, the kinds of ecosystem service trade-offs across different options. I was part of the project to lead the scenario planning component of that big project. So not just here in this particular context, but also on this other parts of Canada that we've done it. So scenario planning, for those who are not yet familiar, is a collaborative process of imagining future states of a system and pathways towards them. So now that we know there are trade-offs across different options, people want different things for different reasons. We need what kind of futures could we even imagine within such a contested system? So what I did was to bring in all these very interesting decision makers in a very, very collaborative process. So we did a big workshop. This is a creative workshop. It's not just a meeting, but it's actually a creative workshop where we brought in 18 key sectoral, non-governmental, and governmental decision makers. So these are really like people who are in the forefront of decision making in that landscape for a few days. But even within the few days, we had like a lot of preparatory engagement where we're trying to imagine, okay, first, what is our connection to this system? Then what do we know about the social ecological conditions of the system? What drives our system? And then we imagine what are the plausible scenarios of these futures. I will not explain a lot about the outputs of that process, but you could just check some of our publications. But just to give you this idea that out of that process of bringing diverse people together, we've been able to imagine different alternative futures for such a contested system. But I think more importantly, I think the most important part of this is that if you bring in all these decision makers from very, very different interests and values that they prioritize or prefer in the system, I'd like you to check this publications at some point, is that you could actually build trust and even empathy among these people. I think the bottom line is that for these very contested spaces, you just need to create those spaces, those processes and mechanisms so that those individuals who usually compete in decision making could have a chance to talk with each other. But also just to tell you that it's not an easy thing, but just to let you know that there's a lot of thinking that you need to do. So if you want to do this kind of process, I think I just want to also share that, it's not just about bringing people together. It's actually doing all these different foundational steps that we don't see in the process, such as negotiating goals, building trust, even bridging the different epistemological and ontological differences across these people. So what is happening right now, just to end, is that now what I'm doing as a fellow in this project is that we're trying to identify future environmental regimes where we could operationalize some of these futures. Like, what kind of environmental governance systems could we put in place so that we could actually address these issues of climate change, salinization within those agricultural dikelands? So I'll just end there so that we have enough time for the next speaker. But yeah, I'd love for you to check out this websites of NSERC ResNet, but also Transcoastal Adaptations. This is the actual organization that is on ground doing all these works. And if you have questions and clarifications, you can reach out to me at this email. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Elson, for this interesting presentation. Do you have any questions for Elson? Yes, please, Mehmet.
Thank you very much, dear Elson, Kate, and Sustain teams. Why the farmers open this area for agricultural production? Because this area always under the danger because of the sea. One question. Second question, which crops they are produced? What is the salinity level? The production is economical.
Those are very good questions. So first things first, why do they continue farming despite the risk and danger? That's what we've been trying to understand as well in this project. Because one, I think those questions are very much related. So the salinity level are different across almost like even at the farm level. So some farms are almost very, they couldn't even grow anymore. But some farms are still doable. So what we are trying to do in this project is really to work with each farmer to tell them is like your land almost has no going back. It's already reached a threshold of salinity level that we couldn't work or produce anymore there. So it's very different. The salinity level is almost different from each place to another. Now, really, a lot of the reason why farmers continue farming is not economical in reason. So that's what we've been finding out in our project. It's like they don't really farm for the sake of money. They farm because of their heritage and because of their social values. That this have been passed on from my great-grandfather by my grandfather, that they feel that they need to continue the work. So that's why it's always polarizing these kinds of things. It's because it's not just a question of it's like, here's $1 million. We're gonna buy your land and then we're gonna convert it to something better. But then they're like, no, I will not sell my land because this traces its roots all the way to Acadian settlement and all those things. So that's just a quick answer to your questions.
Thank you, Elson. That is really interesting. So, do you have any other question? Any questions? Okay, just one for me, and maybe we will have more time for questions at the end of this webinar. What was your highlight? I'm very interested about living labs and workshops. So, what was your highlight about this experience?
Oh my goodness. I think I got tons of highlight, but I think for me is that you just need a space. So I think we need a space for people to come together, But even before creating that space, I think here's what I'm gonna say: work with social scientists. Social scientists, us, we've been working on these kinds of processes for so long that we aim to make sure that our processes don't reinforce, power asymmetries, for example. We don't want these spaces to turn into a boxing match. We don't want people to start punching each other. So I think that's one of the highlights that I'm gonna say. I work with these wonderful ecologists, economists, engineers for the past 5 years, but I think there is a value, especially for those who don't really work in social sciences. There is a value of working with social scientists, especially for socially contested systems and contexts like this one I'm working with.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I think it's time for our second distinguished speaker. Thank you, Elson. So I would like to welcome to the floor our second speaker, Nuray Çiçek, Kankiri Karatekin University, Turkey. And the title of her presentation is Effective Use of Organic Fertilizers in the Biological Remediation of Saline Soils in Turkey. Nuray, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Elson, your presentation. It is very nice. And good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I am Nuray Çiçek. Today, I want to talk about important environmental problem for our country, Turkey, and the world. The effect used of the organic fertilizer in the biological remediation of saline soils in Turkey. This presentation shows biological ways to fix damaged lands. We want to move away from using only chemicals and in situ sustainable combined model. And let's start by looking at how we can change damage soil into complaint healthy ecosystem. The pathway from degradation to regeneration. As you can see here, too much salt in the soil creates a chemical and physical blockage. In very damaged environments, old chemical methods are not enough on their own. My research showed that organic material and halophytic plants are necessary biological tools. They open the soil pores. When they do this, water can flow better, and the whole ecosystem becomes productive again. To understand why we need to act quickly, let's look at this problem on a global scale. Yes, this is our global scale of soil salinization. You can see here too much salt in this in the our this is data from FIO, and it is I think scary. More than 1 million hectares of land are currently damaged by salinization and certification. About 1/30 of all irrigation agricultural lands in the world are in danger still. In Turkey, 1.5 million hectares of land are facing severe salinity and desertification, especially in our arid and semi-arid region, dry and semi-dry area. This global problem creates the big local economic and environmental dangers inside our border. In Turkey, 30% our farming land is actively damaged by heavy salinization. Because of this, we lost about 1.5 million euro every year because crops do not very grow well because of this problem. Also, drought caused by climate change will probably increase salt amount by another 15% over the next 10 years. If we do nothing, we might permanently lose this large farming area, this agricultural area. Where exactly are these dangerous areas? Let's look at our regions, hot spots, and vulnerability across Turkey's agricultural plants. You can see Iğdır Plain here, and you can see Harran Plain and Konya Basin Arancı. You can see our map. We are focusing on three important planes for my presentation. In the other plane, secondary sterilization has already stopped people from using one third of the land. In the Konya Basin, Ayrancı part, we see very high damage. Here, EC values reach 40 dc per meter, and ESP research nearly 15%. Finally, in the Haram plane, wrong watering methods after the GAP project caused the underground water level to rise quickly, which collects sodium in the top and soil layer. And also I saw my professor Mehmet Ali Çullu. He make many projects for this subject, and he make drainage project for this, and I know some of them very successful. And we fix this. Now we fix this soil. We must understand the chemistry behind their damage, because I'm interested in biological part, and this is chemistry of the soil degradation. Sodic soil have electric conductivity below 4, but they have the dangerous exchangeable sodium percentages ESP above 15%, and high pH between 18.2 and 10. We use the sodium absorption ratio, we say SAR, as our main mathematical tools to see the danger. These tools calculate the balance between sodium, calcium, and magnesium ions. This chemical balance causes the physical structure of the soil to pair completely. Electrochemical dispersion and hydraulic failure. On the left, you can see healthy soil with a lot of calcium. On the right, you can see broken structure with too much sodium. Because sodium ions have a large hydration radius, they make clay particles push each other away and destroy the soil structure. This blocks the big pores, so water can't sink into the around anymore. The soil basically becomes a hard, solid block. Sometimes the soil is physical blocked. Plants suffer from something called physiological drought. This means there is a water, but plant couldn't take the water. Physiological drought given by osmotic stress, yes. Even there is the water in the soil, high salt concentration create osmotic pressures around the plant roots. This stops the plant from taking in water. Because of this, plants grow very slowly, have smaller leaves, and many of them die because of water when they are young seedlings. Seedlings not enough strong for this kind of things. Besides stopping water, the salt also damages to inside of the wattle cells. Plant cells, and specific ion toxicity and metabolic release. Toxic sodium and chlor ions enter the cells and stop the plants from taking the good potassium. Potassium is very important for enzyme and making chlorophyll. When the sodium potassium ratio is broken. The cells stop working correctly. This is why we see the drop in SPAT values, which shows that photosynthetics is failing reduce. However, nature gives us restorer plants that can fight against this problem. Biological tolerance mechanisms in restorer plants. Some plants develop the way to survive high salt levels. They produce internal elements like proline and betanin. I'm interested in especially proline for my analysis and for my researching. Especially we saw this kind of restorer plants have in the salt stress, they have more proline. And they are for this reason they will be strong. Some of them not enough proline, and they can't be how can I say they don't have tolerance like this, and high sodium in values or kept it away the road level. Important space for our work includes barley and tall wheatgrass and tall fescue. These plants our biological friends. Understand these natural ways, biological ways, help us see why using only chemicals often fails. The chemical valency of mechanical valency of chemical only reclamation. The traditional method uses a lot of gypsum and then tries to wash the soil with a lot of water. However, in soil with too much sodium, the ground is already blocked. The water just sits on the top because it can't enter the soil. So we can see that chemical methods need physical and biological keys to open this blockage. And this 13-parter key using farmyard manure. You know, this is easy and cheap. Physical unlocking via farmyard manure. This researching from Atatürk University, their data show that farmyard manure releases organic acid and develops calcium in the soil. This starts a good cycle, opening the soil pores, allow the deep sodium washing. This improves the soil structure and water movement. For crops like barley, this means a big increasing in both grain amount and protein quality. Next to manure, we also using biochar and vermicompost as biological engines, like engine. Igniting the biological engine, biochar and vermicompost. Biochar gives a stable, porous carbon structure, and vermicompost, you know, made by Red California earthworm. It is easy, very easy, and this vermicompost gives high biological activity. For example, this researching from other university or the university, they test 60 days test data from show that this material quickly increases the microbial life and enzyme activity like urease, dehydrogenase. These are necessary for nitrogen cycle and cell life for plant. I have listened to specific jobs of this material in the amelioration matrix. The organic amelioration matrix you can see here our farmyard manure, compost and vermicompost, biochar and leonardite. Also leonardite used many researcher. Each material has specific problem. For example, manure you can see reduce pH and ESP. Compost and vermicompost increase microbial life in the soil enzyme, you know. Biochar helps the soil hold water and leonardite stabilization saline colloids. Together, very quickly realize clogged nutritions. Once the soil is physically ready, we can start holoping soil engineering. They are coming. Phytoremediation, holophytic soil engineering. Phytoremediation works in three ways. First, it dissolves chemicals using carbon dioxide from the roots. Second one is open the water pathways using the deep roots. And last one, it extracts salt, meaning the plant absorbs salt and keeps them in upper parts, you know, leaf and other place. We test some test these steps in model study in the Harran plain. The Harlan plain model study experimental designing. In this study, they test three plant types on saline and sodic soil from Akçakale series. You can see on the pictures. Our biological tools very common classword Salicornia europea and common porcelain and triticale. The results show us which plants are the real champion are cleaning the soil from salt. You can see special efficiency, electrical conductivity reduce our table. And common classword was very successful. It reduced EC, you can see from here, 8.07 to 1.87. And down and porcelain unfortunately die, you can see die when it was settling because of the high sodium levels. And triticale show that mix reduce. It works well in the drainage soil, but it actually increased the salt in the undrained soil because of the transportation. It shows that choosing the right plant is very important this kind of project. Besides the removing sites, long life grass give us the class effect. You can see the class effect, perennial for age crow integration. Perennial grasses like tall fescue and tall wheatgrass do two things. They help to soil recover using their rods, and they can be used as food for farm animal. They eat these kind of plants. This is especially important for the udder. To control these efforts in large area, we use the satellite technology. Basin scale monitoring and land degradation neutrality LDM. Saying that this soil is part of UN Sustainable Development Goal 50.3. We use the remote sensing like MODIS and Landsat data to check it in DVI and net primary productivity. This like eyes in the sky because show us if we are successful and warn us if salt is coming back, and we can see this kind of monitoring very easy. But we also need to think about the high cost of water. Water is important. Um, the necessary of the irrigation water cost and single methods failure. Using on water to wash the salt is not sustainable. In the Karaman Ayrancı test, reduce ESP required 150 centimeter of water. In the Lake Burdur Basin, we need the 300 centimeter. We do not have this much water. We must use organic and biological case to make every drop count together. This brings because of this we need four-step combined model. You can see the four-step integration biological redimension model, chemical reduction, physical unlock, hydraulic fusion, biological synthesis. First, first chemical reaction, we use gypsum to move the sodium. They can change in the formula. And on place physical unlock. Second one, we add the high amount of organic matter to help water flow again. Hydraulic fusion, we wash the soil with water from time to time. Biological resistances, we use the halophytes or grasses to clean the rest of the water and cover the ground. Finally, how we do turn this plan into official rules and policy. Sustainable management directives and policy. Our recommendations are simple, very simple. Always include organic integration in soil cleaning plants because cheap and very useful. Use halophyte engineering, we say like this kind of plant, especially Salicornia europea for very bad case. It is strong plant, have big terminals. Use phase rotation to help the local farmers and economics. Make remote senses necessary to check large area, and you can see it is okay, successful or unsuccessful. You can understand very easy this remote sensing. And by bringing chemical, biological, and physical tips together, we can protect the future of farming in Turkey, also in world. And thank you for joining today's our webinar. And
Yes, thank you very much, Nurey. That was really interesting. And I really enjoyed the 4 steps, which are very important for agriculture in saline areas and also for agriculture in saline areas. Also, I enjoyed very much the policy recommendations. So, do you have any other questions for Nurey?
Thank you for joining for my friends and my professors. Thank you for everyone.
And those photos that you are presenting now are really interesting.
Yes, with my friends, we go to some salt effect area in Çankırı, and we take photograph and we make analyze. Sometimes we make experiment in the greenhouse with my students like this.
Yes, that's interesting. So, if there are any other questions for Nurey or Elson, I would like to thank you all very much for joining our 5th Sustain webinar. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would like to inform everyone that we're going to have a break, summer break for our webinars, and we will continue again on September or October, depends on the people that are willing to present. Thank you. Thank you all. And the Sustain Cost Action for this opportunity. Have a great summer, relax,
Thank you for joining.
and see you soon.
Okay, thank you very
so
much.
much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.